Hey guys, this is the fifth part of the Java programming tutorial. First of all, I'd like to apologise for the delay between the fourth tutorial and this one. First of all, I had some computer problems, some notable crashes, and then when it did fix, my video that I recorded last night got corrupted in the process of uploading to YouTube, so I had to re-record it today, so hopefully this should go up without much bother. So in this tutorial we're going to start on the main part of the programming, which is the classes in Java. So we're going to learn how to create and use our own classes. So let's just get started then. I've got a project in Eclipse here called classes, and I'm just going to add a new class to this. Now, as an example for this tutorial, I'm going to use a class that represents a person. So we can just stick that in there. Now you can create a class for any sort of object you would like to use. If you wanted to define a car object, you could write a car class, and so on. There's hundreds of thousands of different examples you could make. And as always, it starts with public class person, as we're used to. Now we don't need a main method yet. There are two possible things that we can do with this. We can put a main method after we're finished creating this person object class at the bottom. Or we could create another class that just uses this class, and that's usually the best thing to do. It's not nice to put a main method at the bottom of this class, because if someone wanted to use a person in their own class, they'd have to comment out the main method so that it wouldn't collide with their own main method. So first we should probably start on commenting this code. We're going to learn about Javadoc today, and if you remember from a couple of tutorials ago, I showed you the three types of comments. You could have single line comments, multi-line or block comments, and these Javadoc comments, which look similar to a slash star star here. And these Javadoc comments generate an online document that describes what your class does, so you can put whatever you like in here. So I'm just going to describe what this class is. It's a class to represent a person. That's quite simple. Okay, and as you see, when you hit enter, it will give you some tags. This one only has an author tag, so that's what you can use here. There's other tags you can use. Usually Eclipse will give you the ones you really want to use most often. Now when you first think about creating a class, you have to work out what kind of attributes your class will have. Now, as this class is representing a person, you can think easily of what kind of things would go into a person. You could have a name, you also have an age, and you have a gender. We're going to demonstrate these here. Now, you might remember the public access modifier, which means you can access whatever this is from anywhere. For instance variables, it's more handy to use the private access modifier. This means that these instance variables can only be accessed directly from inside this one class. It means that you can't have some other class somewhere else and change an instance variable that you're not supposed to. You can provide methods or functions for other people to change these and set these things. We'll get onto that a little bit later. So let's create some instance variables. So we need the private modifier. Now the name's obviously going to be a string. That'll be quite easy to understand. We can also have an integer for the age, and we can also have the. Now this is where it gets interesting. You might think the gender would be a string, either the string male or the string female. But because there's only two distinct possibilities that this variable can ever take, you might as well put a boolean in there. And the way it usually works is you just pick one of them to be the true value and one of them to be the false value. Now I'm just going to pick the male value to be the true value, so I'm just going to put male. So if male is true, then the person is a male. If male is false, the person is a female. So it makes sense to do it like that. So now we have the instance variables, we can go about setting some way that the user can create a person object, and this is the constructor we need to use for this. The constructors are just functions that let the user input certain attributes, such as these ones up the top, to give to a person object. So a constructor is always public because you want to be able to access it from out with the class. You want someone to be able to create a person object without actually having to be inside your own class that you've created. There's no return type and there's no static or anything after it. It's just the name of the class. So this class is called person. The constructor will be public person. And if you remember from the previous tutorial, you instantiate an object with the new keywords. So we could say the person p equals new person, and inside the brackets, we'll get to that now. So inside the brackets, you want to put the attributes that the user is going to have to enter in to create this person object. And usually you would put all the instance variables in. So I'm just going to call them the exact same. You could call these other things, and we'll come to that in a second. So I'm just going to put all these in here. And of course you need the block to open the function. Now inside this constructor, what you want to do is just set the variables up the top to the things that the user puts in. So you might think I could do name equals name. That's not going to work because the names are the same. And it's because I like using what's called the this keyword. And this just refers to the current object in question. So this .name will actually refer to the person being created, which is this instance variable here. And that name is actually that one there. Now if you called that variable n instead of name, you could simply do name equals n. And sometimes this looks easier. I personally prefer just to have the same name each time because it means that you don't get confused. Well, I don't get confused with it anyway, but different people have different opinions on it. I just like to use this at all times. So we can do that for the age and the male as well. So we just need to do this.age equals age, and this.male equals male. And that's really all you want to do in the constructor for a person object. All you want to do is set the variables to whatever the user wants them to be. Now there can be more than one constructor per class. You don't have to have just one. The only thing is you can't have another public person, string name, and age, boolean, male, because then the compiler will not know which one to use. Instead, if you had a different set of things inside the brackets, you can easily do that. So we can have another person object that maybe doesn't specify an age, so we can just miss that out. And we can set the name to the name again, just as we did before. And we can set the male or the gender to the right thing. This will say keep age as a kind of null value or default value, but we may as well initialize it to something. So I'm just going to set it to 0, default value. You could always set it to -1 to say, this age can't happen. I'm just going to keep it at 0 just now. It's always better to initialize all your instance variables just in case you want to use it later on. You can get null pointer exceptions and all sort of strange exceptions from not initializing your variables and trying to use them in something later on. So I think we'll stop there on the constructors, but first, before we go on, we'll put a Javadoc comment for each of these constructors. So it's just simply explaining what this does. So this is a constructor that specifies all the instance variables, and when we hit enter, you'll see now we have @param tags, and @param tags just lets you explain what each parameter, which is the thing in the brackets, does. So param name is the name of the person, age is the age of the person. So you can see it's very easy to work out what to do here. Now this is different. I like to explain is true if the person is male, false otherwise. And it just lets the user what to do. We can also do it above here. So this is a constructor that does not specify age. Simple as that. And now we've got those two. I'll leave these out for now, and the code that I'm going to put the download link to, I'll finish off all these Javadoc comments. It's just a bit clunky to do them all in the middle of recording. So the next thing we should try and do is make methods to make these private instance variables of this class accessible to users who want to use them. Now of course you don't have to do this, but for the access of variables, it's very easy to forget that some people need access to them. It's different for setting variables. If there's some variables you never want people to set, then of course you don't want these kind of methods to set the variables. But we're just going to do them all here anyway, just for an example. So these methods are called accessor and mutator methods. Now, accessor methods are methods that return the variable, the value that's inside the variable, and mutator methods are methods that set the value of an instance variable to something of the user's choosing. So let's go ahead and make an accessor method for the name instance variable. Now, an accessor method is going to be public because you want it to be accessible from anywhere. The return type of the function is going to be whatever the type of the instance variable you want to return is. So name is a string. And the convention for getter methods, which are also called accessor methods, are that they start with the word get, and then whatever the instance variable is called. Of course, following the convention of the capital letter at the second word. And the function takes no parameters. We don't need to put anything into the function. This is going to give us an error until we actually return something. So all we need to do here is return the name. So basically that's a way of getting around the fact that the instance variables are private and giving the user something to be able to get the name. This is the convention. You don't really put public instance variables unless really necessary. So we could do this for the other ones. So I've got get age here. Again, nothing in the brackets. And all we need to do here is return the age of the person. And we can also do it for the male. So boolean, get. Oh, this is where it's different. When a boolean function, the convention is because you're asking true or false. So bear that in mind. And we can just return male here, because male is either true or false. There we go. And Javadoc Comments also work for these. So the Javadoc comment, for instance, for the getName function could be accessor method to return the name of the person. And you'll see when we hit enter, a return tag comes up, and this just lets you specify what the function actually returns: the name of the person. It might seem a little bit monotonous to sit and type all this out, but it is good to explain what your classes do to make your code more readable to someone else. So that we've got all these get methods here. Then we can go on to the mutator methods. The mutator methods are the opposite of the get methods. You give it a value and it sets the value. It doesn't return anything. So again, it's going to be public to access it out with the class. The return type is going to be void because there is no return type. Nothing is returned. And the convention is set plus the name of the variable. So set name. And I forgot to put this in here. So inside the brackets is whatever the user is going to put in. So the users want to put in a string that represents the name. And similar to the constructor, in fact the exact same as the constructor, the name variable is set to whatever's there. Now yet again, as I said earlier, you can make this variable called anything you want. You can call it n, and it will be name equals n. But feel free to try it whatever way you want. And before we go any further, let's do a Javadoc comment for that. So we're going to have a mutator method for the name attribute. And the param tag comes up again. Name to be set, or something along those lines. And we have a strange error here. I'm not sure what's going on here. Okay, I'm not quite sure what this extra bracket is for. I think that's quite crazy. There we go. Okay. So there's a prime example of weird Eclipse errors that seem to be for no reason whatsoever. All I did there was take away that bracket and put it back in. Okay. Never mind. So we can do these mutator methods for the other instance variables, and yet again it's going to be void, and we're going to have the same kind of thing. We have set age, And in here we're going to have the integer that represents the age that the user wants to set the age to. And we do this dot age equals age. And you can see there's a pattern here emerging. So we go for the next one, and the last one is set male. You notice there's no different convention here. And just set that quickly. And as I said, I'll complete the Javadoc comments before I put the code up on Dropbox. It's just I don't want to waste most of the video time sitting typing out Javadoc comments when one's enough to give a kind of quick example. So now that we've got a way of letting the user set and get the variables that the class has as its attributes, we just now have to put in another couple of methods that are usually included in any classes. And these are the equals and toString methods. Now the equals method gives a way of comparing two objects of this class, so you can compare two person objects together to see if they're equal. Now bearing in mind that usually when you're setting something equal to each other, you want to have something that's unique about them so that you can test if it's equal. I mean, this class will not have any unique objects in principle because names are not unique, ages are not unique, and genders are not unique. But for the illustration of this tutorial, we're going to assume that name is unique. So each name can only be held by one person. Of course, this is not reality, we're just doing this for an example. So we're going to do the equals method now, so it is a public method, as most of these methods are going to be. It returns a boolean because it returns true if the objects are equal, and false if the objects are not equal. And the method is usually called equals. Now, I'm going to show you the naive version, what's called the naive version of the equals method at the moment, because the proper version of the equals method that doesn't assume that you're comparing two objects from the same class brings a couple of concepts that we've not covered yet, so we'll get onto that later. So I'm just going to put a person in here. So we need to compare the person represented by this, as in the thing before the dot, the person that you put before the dot, against P, which is the person that you place in the brackets. So we can just test if the name of this is the same as the name of P. And because testing whether the name is equal to each other is a Boolean expression on its own, we can simply return that expression. So we can return this dot, and we can use name straight from the name. You don't have to use the getName function because we're inside the class. And because the names are strings, we have to use the dot equals method. As you remember, for strings we can't do double equals to test if they're equal to each other. And in here just goes p.name. So as you'll see there, this might look quite confusing because there's two dots here, but this dot name here represents the string. P.name represents a string, and that is a string dot equals another string. Okay, so we've done the equals method now. So the last thing that's usually included in every class is a toString method, and a toString method is a way of printing something out, the instance variables out to the screen. So it's a public method, and it returns a string, and the name of it is toString. Don't need anything in the brackets because you use the dot operator, as you do for most of these, well actually all of these methods. So the toString method just returns a string which contains a nice format of the instance variable. So I'm going to return a string.format just to make it look nicer. So let's go for name %s, that's the string. We're going to have age %d, and the last one is gender. Now we're going to have to put something in here, so I'm going to put %s for now, and we'll come back to it in a second. But first we're going to put name and age in here. Now we're going to leave this blank here just now because we need to do something yet. Now the booleans don't really go well with string formats, so we need to change something into a string. So we need to test if the male is true, and if it is, make a variable equal to male. If not, we need to make a variable equal to female so that we can print it out. And it looks nicer if you've not got just true, gender true. That wouldn't be very nice. So we use an if else statement here. Now this seems like a pretty good time to show you a very quick shortcut of the if else statement. It's a lot more complicated than the if, this, then, else. But I felt like it's a good time to start introducing the more complicated concepts. So you can set a variable to the outcome of an expression, or the outcome of an if statement. So let's go and say string gender equals. Now this is where you would we could put string gender equals a empty string and then say if male, or if male is true, then gender is male. If it's false, then gender is female. But we can simply do male, or we need to do this.male actually. And we can do this.male equals true. This question mark says, what happens when this thing in the brackets is true? Well, when it's true, the gender is going to be male. There's a colon here that says, well, what if it's not? Female. So you see that this looks quite complicated, but it's the same as an if else statement. If this.male is equal to true, highlighted by the question mark, you set string gender to male. If this.male is not equal to true, the colon, you set it to female. Now because this.male is a Boolean expression, you can actually just take the equals true off of that. So that's an extra shortcut you can make. So if this.male. So now that we've got that, we can just stick this gender in here, and that will allow us to print out a nice representation to the screen. So now that we've done all the methods that are usually included in every class, we can feel free to put any other variables you want, methods you want. So, for instance, we have the age of the person. We could get it to give us the date of birth, the year of birth. So we can have public int year of birth. So this, when you initialize this function, when you're putting it to a person, if you had a person called P, you'd do P dot year of birth. Now as the way to find what the current year is quite complicated and quite long. For this function, we're just going to assume that the current year is 2012, which it will be for quite a while. So this will work for a while, but later on we'll start getting into properly making the methods on it. But this video is getting a bit long already, so I'm thinking that I should probably cut this down a bit. So we have the age of the person, and we have the current year. So we can return year minus this dot age, and that will simply take away the years of the person, like how old they are, take it away from the age and return it, the year and return it. So this is just simple methods that you can use. You can use as many methods as you want. There's no limit on what you can do. So feel free to make up your own, change what I've got here, see what works, see what doesn't work. So now that we've created the class, we may as well go ahead and use it. So as I said, you can put the main method down here, but it's probably easier to keep these classes kind of generic and separate. So I'm going to put a class called person test in here as well. And this is just going to be a quick driver class or a test class to test out these person objects. So because it's in the same package, we don't actually have to import the person. So let's go for person p equals new person. Oh, no, we don't. Actually, we have to put the main method in as well first. Sorry about that. Getting ahead of myself. This should look very familiar by now. So now we've got the main method. So we can create a person object. Now if we go back to the class and remember what is in the constructor, we have a choice of two. We can specify a name, an age and a gender, or a name and a gender. I'm going to go for them all. So the name, let's say John, age 20 or 35, seems I mistyped the key there, and let's say he's a male. And let's create another person. P2, new person. Let's call this woman Mary, she's going to be 32, and the male is false because she's a female. Now we can use these methods to print out different things, so we can system.out.println, and we can go for p dot, and if you type dot you'll see all the things you've just created, so we can get the age of John, print it out. Quick way to do system.out.println, by the way, is to do syso and hit control and space. Very quick way to write a println statement. So let's go for p2 dot is male. That should turn up false. We can also type out the result of the comparison between p and p2, which should come out to false. And let's just print out this nice formatted equals method that we have for both of the persons. So now that we've got that, we can run that and see what happens. Let's run that. Okay, so as you can see, we have the age of John, which is 35. We have the is male attribute of Mary, which is false. We have that Mary does not equal John, which is completely correct. And we have these two nicely formatted strings that show you the attributes of the person. So now you have saw how you can create your own classes in Java. Feel free to play around with this person class. I'll put the link up in Dropbox, as I said. Feel free to add more to the person test, make your own person test, even make your own class. If you follow the concepts in this video and the concepts shown in the person class and the code, you should be able to create simple objects really easily. And all you need to do is substitute the instance variables of the person for the instance variables of the object you want to create. So I hope this tutorial was helpful, and I hope that the tutorials will be a little more regular now that the computer problems are now sorted out. Feel free to leave any questions, comments or suggestions in the comments below, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Thanks a lot.